What's going on, everybody? Hope you're having a wonderful evening so far. We are back with Built on Hope. We're talking Andor episode 4 today, as we just talked. Star Wars math. It's our fourth episode of Andor, but our second episode of this show. So lots to get to. Even though it's just the one episode to cover today. I'm Josiah Leroy. With me, as always, Mr. Baba Yaga, John Fick. John, how you doing tonight?
I'm doing great. Happy to be here. Happy to talk Star Wars as always.
Happy to talk Star Wars. Amen to that. Thanks for tuning in. We are live at twitch.tv/thegeekiverse. Also, simultaneously for the first time at youtube.com/thegeekiverse. If you get in the chat, we'd love to have that conversation with you. So again, thank you for tuning in. If you happen to miss this, you're watching or listening back, all of our videos are at youtube.com/thegeekiverse and listen on podcast services, wherever you download podcasts on podcast services around the globe. How many times can I say podcast in 10 seconds?
As many as you want. It's your show, Josiah.
Well, I'm going to say it a few more times then. So, Andor episode 4, I want to read something from our buddy Marissa here. This is a perfect way to describe this. She said it's like they're layering a cake.
Oh, okay. I like a good cake.
Yes. And I think that's the most perfect way to describe this so far. This is a slow roll. It's a build-up. And this episode, I think it was the best one so far. At least it was my favorite in terms of what we saw, who we saw, and what was actually happening. So, John, give me a reaction on this episode. What did you think of it?
Interesting. Yeah, I like the cake analogy. I like the layers. I would say it's my least favorite episode so far, but that's not too much of a detriment. I think the show's still good. I'm having fun with it. We know this is 12 episodes, so what I'm seeing right now is the show might be kind of like 4 parts. We got parts. We got the first part. We got 2 build-up episodes in episode 1, and then a decent climax in episode 3. Episode 3 is my favorite so far, right? So like episode 1 and 2 were build-ups to the climax in episode 3, and I think that kind of settled itself. And we have a new build-up. We've got a new objective, and we're being reintroduced to the stakes, right? Like this is another setup episode, just like episode 1 and 2 were to the penultimate episode 3, right? So I think we got more setup here, but I think there's also some more fun stuff here. Like we've got the introduction of Mon Mothma. We're seeing roots. We're seeing stuff that we know was going to play out in the future. But ultimately, I thought it was a bit of a setup episode. It was introducing, Cassie into this team, and seeing what that relationship is like with Luthen, and I forget the leader of this group, the girl's name, but yep. Seeing that relationship with her and Luthen, and then her and her team, and the way she's got to pass along that information, everything like that. I had plenty of fun with it. I continue to love this show. I think it's a good step in a different direction for Star Wars. It's a very isolated story. I know that last week we chatted about let's not get hyped about what could be. What cameos can happen. This is the show that doesn't have cameos. But man, are we gonna see Thrawn? I'm starting to think about it. We're seeing all of this middle management. We're seeing all of these nobodies in the Imperial whatever. We're seeing these paper pushers. There's people that are like, I don't care. You're not here to save the galaxy. You're here to give me your reports on time. Those are the Imperial officers. Those are the ones we're seeing right now. There's somebody else. There's somebody else behind all of this, and I just think that maybe we might see Thrawn in this series. And I know I'm getting my hopes up, but I'm doing it, man. I'm doing it.
Dude, stop it.
I'm not stopping.
I'm only telling you to stop it so that I stop.
Stop.
I think it makes sense, right? Because they've been teasing Thrawn. They teased it in the middle of season 2 of Mandalorian when Ahsoka is asking where he is. We know that's going to be a thing down the line. We believe that's going to be the storyline for the Ahsoka series.
We got the casting for Ezra, but not for Thrawn. Pretty good reason. Pretty good reason.
Right. I think you've got a lot of really strong points here because, I don't want to get ahead of myself here, but I do think there's a lot of valid points going on there. And Marissa, you made it into the chat. Good job. You figured it out. So Vel, it's funny that Vel is the leader. That's the girl we were talking about.
Okay, got it.
And it's funny that I forget it because when I heard that, I was like, wait, we just introduced Vale a few years ago in Solo, a Star Wars story. Come on, we're only changing one letter here. This is ridiculous.
I couldn't even tell you there's a Val. I don't know. There's too many characters.
There's too many characters nowadays. I don't
They're all
even know how
gonna
to keep
die
up with them.
anyways. We know that.
Aren't we all, John? Aren't we all? So what I really liked about this episode, it's funny, you described these almost like Star Wars trilogies, right? They're there's a build up, we got the climax, and then we see how it goes. But I think one underlying thing that was really established well, even more so than the first three we got, or any other Star Wars property to date, is how strong the Empire really is. Even in the original trilogy, there's these insurmountable odds, and they're going to blow up the Death Star. They do all these things. Rogue One, there's this horrible dread and urgency. Look at some of the conversations that go on in this episode. Like they can't talk about it. They can't even know that certain people are involved. You've got all these factions of rebels, right? There's no rebel alliance just yet officially. And you've got Cassian mentions 4 of them. He says the Alliance and then 3 others that I forgot, but one of them is who Saw Gerrera is the head of, and they've got all of them. They're kind of disjointed. They end up fighting each other. Cassian says at one point. Anyway, I'm going down just a different path there, but I think about maybe my favorite character in this episode. It's Mon Mothma, who's Genevieve O'Reilly. Love, by the way, that she's back again. She got to do this character in Rogue One in 2016. She had a brief moment in Revenge of the Sith in 2005. She's really doing this character justice. But this is her time to shine. She's finally getting that real screen time. And she talks about with Luthen how she's really got this vulnerability and she's got the most to lose, right? She's in the Imperial Senate. If they catch wind of any of this, she's executed, essentially, not in front of everyone, but the Empire, they do this behind the scenes. They've got their enforcers all over. She goes away. She disappears. She knows that. I love when she's in that taxi ride away from Luthen's shop, that stress on her face, knowing that this could all go wrong.
Right.
And that she says it in his shop. I love that conversation. There's new spies every day. They can't move money around. She goes to the bank and there's new faces every day.
She has a new driver. Yeah, right. Perfect.
Why do we care about that? Right. When Luthen says, I forget the name of the girl he's with.
Yeah.
But he says to her, she's got a new driver. And I was like, okay, whatever. What do I care? But then afterwards, we realize why that's a big deal.
Big Brother.
So the Empire is just, yes. Yep. And I thought, seriously, to wrap that up, that this episode did it better than anything in Star Wars I've seen so far, where I felt like on pins and needles on the edge. And I think it'll continue to get more like that as we move on in this series. But sure, I was on edge the entire time thinking, oh my gosh, like we're only seeing the Empire and essentially paperwork is being done, right? Like these awful boardroom meetings. We're not even thinking about people like Thrawn or Tarkin or freaking Lord Vader. Like, oh my gosh,
For sure.
It's crazy.
Yeah, they're doing such a great job at like showing us how insurmountable of a task this was for the rebellion to succeed. Like they're talking about how the original rebel alliance, there's like you said what, there's 4 different groups out there with the same agenda, but they're not on the same page. Like it's all guerrilla warfare. Like the fact that this eventually works is insane. And we've seen segments of that throughout Star Wars. We've seen Rogue One, we've seen Rebels, we've seen different stories in comics and stuff like that. I feel like this is Disney and Star Wars' way to just like show us like, okay, yes, all that was kind of just happening simultaneously. Like some of it connects a little bit, but like this is where this is the grassroots of the rebellion. This is where we acknowledge all of that and kind of show you like, wow, this really shouldn't have happened.
I couldn't agree more. It's funny, we talk about also, or we did last week on Built on Hope, that this was a show that didn't rest on prior Star Wars Easter eggs and a lot of, I guess, almost the thrill of cameos.
Right.
But that's starting to already change a little bit for me, and I think it is for you, right? Because you're talking about Give Me Thrawn. But
we're so weak.
We're so weak. It's talk about like the most powerful drug in pop culture. For me, it's Star Wars. Like I'm like, give me that Tarkin or give me that Thrawn.
For sure.
We got Coruscant. When I saw that, I was like, oh
yeah.
In my head, I'm like, it's been so long since I've seen anything Coruscant. Like, get over myself.
Just got it on Kenobi, right?
We did. We literally just got it a few months ago.
I had Coruscant spoiled for
love
me,
seeing that.
and I knew it was coming in this episode because one of my great internet friends, Matt Rohrbeck, who got early access to the first 4 episodes of the show, I watched his review, and they were talking. It was a spoiler-free review, but he had mentioned seeing Coruscant. I'm like, oh, it's not in the first 3 episodes because I specifically didn't watch his review until I watched the first 3 episodes, and he mentions Coruscant. I'm like, okay, so we get Coruscant episode 4. I know that, but luckily it wasn't a very big spoiler. Not too much goes down there. You know, Mon Mothma was involved in this show very heavily, so obviously, that was inevitable, but that was funny.
I like that we're seeing Coruscant in the heyday of the Empire here, like when it's on lockdown, so to speak, and they've got everything going on in and out. From the meetings that we see to even just the traffic, like it's a different time frame than a few decades ago when we saw it in the prequels, when the Jedi are there and it's the Republic, all of that stuff. It's kind of the first time we're really seeing Coruscant, minus some of the stuff in the animation,
right? Comics
under
as well.
Imperial rule. Yes. Right. Our first time live action, we should say.
Yeah.
So that was really cool. There were references throughout, they mentioned that there's extra equipment going to Scarif.
Yeah.
Right?
It's like this big mystery.
Bastards.
What happens on Scarif? Yeah, it's really cool.
What's going there? I feel like Scarif would be like when you work for a company and there's like a few states that you're in and Hawaii happens to be one of them. You're always hoping for that transfer. Like that would be Scarif,
Yeah, for sure. Hey, beautiful place.
Absolutely. I think that would be my place to visit in Star Wars if I could go anywhere in that fictional universe. The other one that caught my ear was Hosnian Prime.
Yeah.
So they're in like the, I don't even know, where you catch your next train station, for lack of a better term. I don't know what we're calling it, but they mentioned Hosnian Prime, which is the eventual capital of the New Republic when we get towards the sequel trilogy, and it's the planet that gets destroyed in Force Awakens. So, these little callbacks are happening. They're giving us the taste. They know what they're doing, John.
They do. They certainly do. They're planting the seeds. They're fleshing it out.
If there was any doubt of us coming back for, the next week, it's like, hey guys,
yes.
What do we got here? Like it's brutal. One character, so we talked about a little bit pre-show, was Deidre Miro.
Yeah.
Played by Denise Gao. I'm terrible with these names. Deidre is the female Imperial officer that is most prominent in this. She has blonde hair, the white garb. Really liked her performance in that. This is a character I want to get to know more about, and I think we will in the coming weeks.
I'm trying to figure out why we're going to get to know more about her, right? So why is she focused? Is it because that she really has a different take on the, is she really going to shoot her way up to be an Imperial, or is she going to eventually turn rebel? Like, why Deidre, right? Like, there's got to be a reason we're focusing on her. Either she's going to be a badass Imperial officer and shoot right past all this bureaucracy that she's dealing with, or she's going to have a turn and we're going to get her, to maybe help out with this mission. So I'm curious to see why.
Well, I love the discussion when she's kind of battling with this other Imperial officer about whose jurisdiction it is and who gets to take on this case, because Imperials are it's dog eat dog, right? They're trying to they're tripping over each other to get to the top. With her, I feel like it's a little bit career, but also maybe equal, if not more. Like, hey, no, I'm noticing a trend here. There's a lot of stuff going on where it feels like these rebels are starting to organize, and they just dismiss it.
Right. She's
right?
seeing
just like,
the seeds of the
ridiculous.
rebellion. She's the one, right? Yeah.
So I wonder if that happens, and eventually it gets around to someone like Thrawn, and then those superiors that are in between them go by the wayside.
Right.
I could see what you're saying, where she becomes a rebel, or at least sympathetic, or maybe she's one of the spies for them, as we're starting to see those seeds planted. I think there's a lot of directions to go, but I really like this character.
Yeah, it's interesting. There's a lot of reasons, possible reasons for her, for the reason she's so inquisitive and pushing this agenda or whatever. But like, to me, it's just, they're painting her in a specific light, almost a positive light. Like, we're supposed to kind of be on her side, and I wonder why.
Yeah, I guess time will tell. I love the whole sequence, again, to call it back, with Mon Mothma in the shop. And I It's so funny when Luthen was putting the wig on, you could see him kind of try to get into character. I thought that was really good acting because it was like getting into a character.
Right.
And he played it so well in that shop. And I continue to always find myself glued to the screen when he's on screen because his delivery is awesome.
Right. Somebody else said this. I think it was Barrett Courtney of Kind of Funny, but it's like, wouldn't you use the wig for the character you're going to be playing sometimes? Like that's his regular life. Like he is a shopkeeper. He's probably doing that like 80 to 90% of his time. Wouldn't you get the wig to be the to be the rebel guy? You know, weird to put on a wig for something you're doing most of the time. So it stuck out to me when I watched it too. I'm like, wait, he's putting on a wig to go live his like normal life. Weird. But funny, whatever. Doesn't matter. Just
that is funny.
Something that stuck out to me.
Well, he just looks so good in it.
Oh, he looked great.
That's why he does it.
Like you said, when he's like practicing in the ship, he gives a little flick. He like gets into his little flair, his
little smile.
Yeah, his artistic shopkeeper flair. I thought that was awesome, and the connection there, like Mon Mothma was having a conversation. She's buying something for her husband to connect that back to when she does go back and talk to her husband. I love that scene. That scene is so cool. That conversation there where he's like, we've got these guests, we've got to entertain, like, we've got to do this and that. I told you about this. And she's like, well, don't sit me next to them. These guys are, they're terrible people. They're doing this and that. Like, I don't want to be, I know we have to, be cordial, but like, this is a little much. So I just love that little, even in her own household, there's that tension between what the Empire is doing and between, the fight that she's fighting behind the scenes.
I totally agree with that. She name drops Slymore. And most Star Wars fans probably don't know who this is. I mean, there's going to be some hardcores out there. So this character is seen in episode 2 and 3, standing next to Palpatine in a few cases in the Senate. I was like, Slymore. Why can't I picture that? So if you guys just Google that, Slymore, it's S-L-Y, last name M-O-O-R-E, just like it sounds. That is a recognizable character, also been in some of the comics. But what a name drop that is. I'm sure we're going to see her in this. That's crazy because this person is so close to Palpatine in that inner circle. So what pressure that's going to be to think about her being almost in Mon Mothma's home. I don't know that they're onto her per se, but I think the Empire is suspicious to everyone.
Yeah, we haven't gotten this yet. We haven't seen anything like, live action. Even like, I don't know, we really didn't get it in Rebels much either, where it's like these senators and these people that still support the cause, like what they go through when, dealing with the Empire. How do they, the shroud that they have to put up to kind of get away with this and the sneaking around. We've gotten a little bit of this in Clone Wars with the Separatists. Like we had a little bit of that, people who were like secretly working for the Separatists, but were still part of the Republic and stuff like that. But to see it now, when the stakes are the freaking Emperor and Darth Vader, the stakes are at an all-time high. You're talking, no trial. If you're caught on this, you're just dead. So it's cool to see those politics shake out.
Even just suspected of any of it. I think it's outstanding the way they're laying this foundation for us. When Mon Mothma was talking about finances and that she maybe found someone, I missed something. Do we think she's talking about Bail Organa or someone else at this point?
Possibly. I didn't pick up on that.
Bail Organa and her have kind of been friends for a long time. I mean, back to episode 3, Star Wars episode 3, Revenge of the Sith. One of the deleted scenes was basically Mon Mothma, Bail Organa, and also Padme basically saying they're talking about the seeds of the rebellion. Not necessarily the rebellion, but that they think that they're on the wrong side of things. And I think that's probably not who she's talking about.
But I wouldn't be surprised. I wouldn't be surprised to see Bail in the series though. We just saw him in Obi-Wan. Like he's still, obviously of age for the character and clearly willing to do it. Huge part of the rebellion, obviously. So I wouldn't be surprised if we see that character either. Obviously not a huge cameo we have to look out for every week. I just think that's a possibility.
I think so too. In terms of the rebellion pocket that Cassian is now a part of, I love the idea of all of that and seeing the strategy and even them sitting around the fire and Cassian being like, "Can I finish my food?" And they're like, "Yeah, you're gonna know all of that before the morning." I love the dynamic in that group and the suspicion. And there was one character, Nemec, who was kind of sympathetic towards Cassian. I liked that angle.
You can
like
tell
there was a little of everything going on.
Yeah, he's very much an empath. Like he knows when he reads emotions and knows what's going on. Like very very transparent about it. This whole vibe, this whole group reminds me a lot of Solo. Reminds me a lot of when Han, joined that group. I forget all those characters' names, whatever. But when he joined that group and he was kind of the outsider, it's like, do we trust this guy? What is he doing here? We've been working on this plan forever. Like, we're gonna bring somebody else in now, right? Like, reminds me of that. I'm curious to see where everything ends up and who survives this, and what they have to do with the future of the rebellion.
I think in a short period of time, very short, they've done a nice job of developing some of these characters that I care about, and sometimes they're just throwaways. I feel like some of those Solo characters, like we can't name some of them, which is not always a bad thing, but I didn't feel that connection to them. It was a one-off. Here, I'm like, I want to know more. I want to see where they go over the next few weeks. Maybe they get it to season 2. Who knows?
For sure.
But
for sure.
They're writing and developing very well right now. It's funny because like Tony Gilroy is the writer behind this, also was behind Rogue One. I feel like this is such a flip-flop in a good way. Rogue One was like, we have to make like 17 things happen super quick and compact this into a movie. We have to introduce you to 8 characters that you got to care about, and we got to take them all away, and the Death Star has to happen, and the Darth Vader scene, right? There's so much going on. There are so many rewrites, reshoots. Here it's like, hey, go have at it. Take your time to slowly cook this thing over 2 seasons, right? Like, to me, it's kind of been a beautiful thing. And I feel like it's such a pivot, right? Where it was so rushed in Rogue One and it worked.
Right.
But here it's like Marissa said, it's a cake,
It's a pivot for pacing, but man, it feels like Rogue One. Like it feels like a very similar story, like in terms of what we're getting. Yeah, it looks like it, and it feels like it. The narrative is just like very much structured like it. Obviously, that might just be because this leads directly into Rogue One, and we're very familiar with that. And Cassian Andor is a main character of both, so maybe that's part of it too. But it feels a lot like Rogue One.
My last question, John, are you really upset that we didn't see B2 Emo?
I'm not too upset. It makes sense. It makes sense. You gotta sell us on him early. You gotta make us miss him, and you gotta, we're gonna get that payoff eventually. B2 Emo is gonna save the day. He's gonna somehow be responsible for this team getting to Scarif and saving the entire galaxy with the Death Star. I'm calling it now. B2 Emo is the savior of the galaxy.
B2 Emo, I think, needs to clearly team up with K2SO. It just makes sense, right, John?
You know what? Maybe we just don't have them. We got enough. We got enough of the droids, actually. Good point.
Oh, whatever, man. Whatever.
Just kidding. I'm excited to say K2 eventually. I think that's a season 2 thing, though, because like obviously we know K2 has an established relationship with Andor, but we have a whole second season, so I'm sure that'll be around.
And, obviously, if you've seen past Geekiverse content, I love K2, John, not so much, but I think we're both excited. Maybe sure. I'm wrong, John.
No, I'm excited
to see how the relationship becomes a thing.
Yes. My K2 stance is more that, like, I just don't care for K2 as much as other people do, and certainly not as much as any other droid, especially, like, most of the cute droids. I've said this before, but, like, the more humanoid a droid gets, the less I kind of care about it.
Yeah, that's fair. Any wrapping thoughts that you wanted to bring up that we didn't cover?
No, I'm just excited, man. This is great. Like having this on Wednesdays, like this is appointment viewing. I'm waking up, I'm doing a stationary bike ride every morning, and I'm just watching Andor on my iPad. It's been awesome. Looking forward to it.
Good for you, Baba Yaga. You're crushing it. Yeah, it's fun to get back to this, to get to those early morning viewings. And also it's nice too because we get Wednesdays Andor and then Thursdays SheHulk. So it's been like Dude, one thing.
SheHulk has been so much fun. I know it's not the time or place, but I'm loving SheHulk.
It's funny because like I'm in a weird spot where I'm having so much fun with it. I'm like, I don't know if it's like a good show, but like, who am I to?
Right, like
that's a stupid thing to say.
Sure, like, is it consequential for the MCU? I don't know, but I don't care. I just love Jen Walters. She's like the coolest character ever, and I'm having so much fun with SheHulk.
I think what speaks volumes to me is that it's maybe the first Marvel show in however many where I watch it the day it comes out.
Yes, and I feel that urgency.
A lot of times I get behind or I get 2 episodes behind and then I catch up and I'm like, okay. But this, like Moon Knight and Miss Marvel, I kind of got I just got to it when I did.
Right.
This, I'm like, no, Thursday night, I'm watching this before I go to sleep. That's how it goes. It's not Star Wars where I'm getting up early Wednesday, but this is a pretty close second. So I'm having a lot of fun with it.
For sure.
I think maybe next Marvel series we'll jump into something more consistent.
Maybe we do,
because we're having so much fun with Andor.
Maybe we do a recap series of She-Hulk and chat about that. Maybe we'll toss it on the rankings. We'll see. We'll see what happens.
I think that makes sense. Well, we're going to wrap up this episode of Built on Hope. We talked about Andor episode 4. Again, thanks for tuning in at twitch.tv/thegeekiverse or youtube.com/thegeekiverse. John is on social media at Disruptoid. You can find me at I am Josiah, chatting all things Star Wars, Marvel, and soon Buffalo Sabres hockey, baby. We are close to the season opener, so good stuff there. Stick around if you are into video games. We've got our weekly episode of Busy Sticks happening in just a few minutes' time. We love beer. We love video games. We're going to talk about both. We've got a lot of good stuff there. And hey, if you love TV, this ties in beautifully. We've got the first sneak peek in the trailer that is The Last of Us coming to HBO in 2023. So for John, I am Josiah. We'll catch you all soon. Thanks for catching us here on this episode of Built on Hope.
Go Sabres.